kind of what we have been promoting legislatively, because a lot of things, again, our purpose and our goal is to make sure it happens, score a touchdown, if you will. And if it happens by forward pass or you know, a ground game or whatever, you know, we don't really care. And there's a number of different solutions, but we have encouraged thinking that whatever solution is brought up by the state of California or local communities or any kind of a solution that works at all requires a sharps container. And because of the fact that we're a syringe manufacturer, we're familiar with injected molded plastics. By law, the sharps containers have to be made out of injected molded plastic. And so we're familiar with them. We can make them for less than $1 a piece. Everybody else can make them for less than $1 a piece. And it seems like a pretty low ante to put into the game, if you will, just to get the program running. And then again, there's without getting into the fight of, you know, this or that way or whatever way it has to be after that. But we feel very strongly and have encouraged our competitors even to, maybe it's a bad thing to do. We might lose some of our growth if we, because that might be part of it, is that we do supply these containers. But nevertheless, we're committed to solving the problem. And there's nothing more that we would like to see than all of our competitors, including ourselves, at least supply a free sharps container and let you people you know, deal with the rest of it. But that's, like I say, kind of our ante in the game, and it's kind of in the beginning of an extended producer responsibility concept too. Just a little bit of education. You probably know about this a lot already, but I particularly want to emphasize the pen needle situation. There's 3 types of home use sharps devices that we're talking about here. One is the insulin syringes. This is a box of BD syringes, again, the one you're most likely going to see because they're 85%. These boxes come with, inside them, with packages of 10 syringes. And there's 3 different sizes of syringes that are used for diabetes. There's the small one, the 0.3 cc, there's the middle size one, the half cc, and there's a larger one, the 1 cc. And the diabetic person will tend to buy the type that is more customized to their particular injection. You can see they're all about the same length. They just have a bigger diameter or smaller diameter barrel, and they're, you know, they're pretty good size. If they're at least laying on the ground, you might be able to see them. And the other thing that the next type of injection is what they call pen injection. Pen injection is really important because this is the future. Many of the other developed countries, Europe, Canada, Japan, are already at 90–95% of the population have converted themselves from syringe injection, where they need the vial, into these pen type devices. And there's 2 different kinds. There's pre-filled ones, and there's some that you put a cartridge in. I've got a couple of them here that you can play with afterwards. I encourage you to, afterwards, to do whatever. I mean, this is not a no-touch display up here. And you can see how these pens work. And another thing, you get my apologies ahead of time. These are really not true pens. These are kind of like dummy pens that they use for diabetes education. But you can kind of see how they work. The liquid or the insulin is inside, or in many cases other types of medications for cancer or whatever. And then you dial in the dose in the back. Oftentimes they have a clicker. You can kind of hear that. So while oftentimes diabetics are visually impaired, so they can just go so many clicks and they know that they've got the right dosage, and then they just press forward and it squirts out the end. To put the pen needle, and this is the part that, again, I want to emphasize, because this is the direction things are going, and they really, I think, are more dangerous than the syringes, and I'll tell you why, is they come like syringes, but they come in a loose bottle of 100. These are also a box of BD pen needles. And what you do is, maybe you might have noticed as I ripped this thing off the end, this is what they call the peel tab, because the needle inside here is sterile. It's been sterilized, and so when you open that up, now the air is getting to it. And then what you do is, again, you can play with them afterwards, see how these things work. You twist them on, pull it off, then there's another cover, and that's the needle. Now, the thing I'd really like to emphasize about this and why I think these things are more dangerous. On one hand, it's good news, bad news. The good news is a lot of the people in the recycling business and so on are concerned about plastic. Big saving over a syringe. Plus the containers don't have to be as big. So there are advantages to it. The disadvantage is things, they're very small. And they're also kind of made out of a transparent plastic. I could drop this on the floor and most of you would walk by and not even see it. It could wash onto the beach or whatever. At least you have a 50-50 chance of seeing a syringe. There's about a 1 in 100 chance you'd see one of these. I've kind of dropped it on the carpet around our house, you just can't see them. The dog steps on them and everything else. So these things are really, and this is the future. And so I'd say these pen needles are something that you should be aware of and realize that these pictures of the syringes and so on, that's all kind of going by the wayside to this type of injection. Give you an idea, just a couple of years ago, the United States market was about 10% pen injection and about 90% syringe injection. Right now it's approaching 50%, and we think in about 3 to 4 years it's going to be over 90% pens, and syringes are going to be almost obsolete. So anyways, the other thing is lancets. This is another type of a sharps. This right here, a Rely On, that's a private label for Walmart. And what lancets are used for is people that have diabetes, the theory of the whole thing is to try to keep their blood sugar level throughout the day. If you get a lot of peaks and oscillations, that's harmful to them. It shortens their life. They're more likely to have amputations later on and all kinds of other problems. So if you're a diabetic, you're trained by your diabetic educator to try to keep yourself level through the day. They do that through frequent testing. What lancets are is they're little kind of like, they've got a little needle here on the end, and they put it in a lancing device. This one here in the back of the package here, I'll have it, shows different lancing devices that it goes in, and they prick themselves, and then they have what they call a BGM or a blood glucose monitor with a little strip in there that gives the reading so that they can try to level themselves off and give the right dosage of insulin throughout the day. And another thing, a diabetic, there's a lot of different people that are insulin dependent, different therapies, but it's not at all uncommon where they have to inject themselves 4 or 5 times a day, try to keep themselves level. So you're talking about a diabetic person, just one diabetic is probably using 1,500 needles a year. And you multiply that times millions of diabetics, and that's how you get these monster numbers of these syringes that are around, and pen needles. Again, diabetics are the most important population that we're focusing on here. It used to be that there were medications, home injections that were done with insulin syringes, but now almost all of that has gone to pen injection for different types of things other than insulin. And so nearly 100% of the insulin syringes right now are being used by diabetics. With pen needles, over 90% are used by diabetics, and the remaining is for a growing list of medications. Every month there's a new medication for all kinds of things. I've got multiple sclerosis, arthritis, HIV, osteoporosis, cancer, hepatitis, growth hormones. There's just a ton of things. But still, the monster number of these things that are used by diabetics just totally overwhelms what all these other things are. And lancets, again, they're 90% overused by diabetics because, again, they're frequently testing themselves throughout a day to try to keep themselves level. I'll skip over these pages here because we're running a little bit behind, but you can look at them. And by the way, my apologies on the sheet that we've got out there because the printing on it is pretty small. It's a real test for your glasses. But there is, I understand how he's got on our website where you can see it bigger, and if you want to refer back to it. So I'll skip over that. Again, you can see how diabetes is growing. It's just phenomenal, not only in the United States but worldwide. The treatment of diabetes, this is kind of an interesting slide in a way because not all diabetics are insulin dependent. Only about 12% take insulin only. And there's about 14% that take both insulin and oral medications. and 58% that take oral medications only. So a little over half the diabetics are not even insulin dependent and use syringes or pen needles, but they almost all use lancets, because even if you're on an oral medication, you want to test yourself frequently throughout the day to keep yourself level. The problem, and you know, I don't want to get into a situation where one statistic, there's a lot of, you know, like with the elections, there are a lot of different, you don't know who's going to win because by, you know, looking just at the surveys, depending how they're using. But the one of them that we have here that shows that, and this is not a California survey, but a nationwide telephone survey, 93% of diabetics throw their used and unprotected syringes in the trash. 3% of them flush them down the toilet, and only 4% of them put them in a puncture-resistant container. And then when you get to the 4%, let's say only, this is being generous, but let's say half of those bring them to a collection site where they're, you know, we're dealing with only 2% of these things that are used, literally billions of them every year, and they're not being properly disposed of. That's the problem. In going around the United States trying to promote these various situations in different places, like Heidi mentioned, I was just out in testifying for the state of Maine legislature last week. They're trying to work on something out there. But in different places around the country, I've been to Sacramento a number of times. That's where I got to know Heidi a number of years ago. But we have come to the conclusion, and it's kind of echoing what some of the other people have been telling here, that there's three essential components to any successful program. Number one is a sharps container. Like I say, whatever program you have, the sharps container is a thing that makes the program go. Convenient collection sites. There's a number of those ideas floated around: hospitals, physician offices, point of purchase sites, like some people have been talking about pharmacies here. Really, that seems to be kind of a consensus, the most common with batteries and a lot of other things, that you bring it back to the place that you buy your thing at. But there's medical waste facilities. And then there's another way that is being promoted, has been promoted, and that's mail back. The third thing behind sharps containers and convenient collection sites is no cost to the sharps user. You start adding money to the actual diabetic or that's using these things, and they just don't fly. And there's probably a lot of reasons why, like people say you have to buy them a second time or whatever. I think a lot of it has to do too with the fact that diabetes tends to hit stronger on elderly people, some people of certain ethnicities that have a higher propensity to diabetes, and oftentimes these people are also financially disadvantaged one way or another, and you know, spending any money at all for these. And I know the ADA, American Diabetes Association, has been really big on this too. Is they look at their constituency as being the diabetics, and they've been really fighting against programs, although they are sympathetic with the safe disposal of these syringes and pen needles and lancets. They are really fighting against any type of cost to their people, their constituency, the diabetics, because what they're afraid of is some of these people just starts costing any money at all, and they're just going to stop taking insulin. You know, it's just going to go off the program. So, so the ADA is very big in no cost to the sharps user. And now what I'd like to do, we kind of talked about the three different types of sharps devices. And what I'd like to do too is kind of go into three different types of home use sharps containers. The first one, the one on the right side for you people there, is the most common one I think around. That's the BD sharps container. They wholesale for about $2.25. You can buy them for about $4 range, different places. And that sharps container holds 70 to 100 insulin syringes or 300 pen needles. The reason why it holds a different number of insulin syringes is I looked at the different size of the 0.3s and the halves and the ones here. A 1 cc will only hold about a 70, but a half or 0.3, it'll take the whole box of 100. And then there's another one that was referred to that Walgreens has going on right now, which is a optional mail back, and that's that the green box there, just to the right, or just to the other side of the red one. And
you're going to speak into the microphone. Yeah. There you go.
how this works is inside of here there's a Sharps container, but it also has a mail-back box. So you have the ability of either using it strictly as a Sharps container. You buy these things. I bought this just the other day for $4.50, and you get all of this stuff, and you can use it just like a BD Sharps container, and whatever you do with it after that. Or you can also use this container. It's got a little bag in there and a tie and so on, and you can safely send this through the mail. But the $4.50 does not buy you the mail-back part. You have to get a hold of this company that makes these things and pay extra, and then they will send you the mailing coupon and so on, and you can send it back. Again, very convenient. Mailback is, I think, the most convenient way of doing things, and that's the big strength of mailback. We're in favor of mailback. We're in favor of point of purchase return. Like I say, we're just in favor of anything that works, but it does have the disadvantage of costing quite a bit more, and again, it's a matter of who's going to foot the bill. And then we have our solution on this. We call it our dual purpose packaging, where this is our box for syringes. Now this one right here is specifically for U40 insulin. It's something used in pets where our company is a dominant supplier of insulin for pets, or not insulin, but in syringes. The pets have not gotten to the point where their diabetic pets are using pen injection yet, so it's all syringe injection. So we have these larger containers here, and the syringes come out again in a bag of 10. One difference is that you'll notice the end cap here is red. That means it's for U40 insulin. So if you, anybody working in the waste business and you see ones with the red tops go through as versus the orange, this is for humans, and this is U100 insulin. This right here, and how this particular device works is you pull the bags out the bottom, and then when you get done using your syringe, you drop it in the slot on the top, and you twist it, and it drops down in the container. And then there's a sliding tray in here, so as you pull more bags out the bottom, there's more room that opens up for the dead syringes. And this, just like the rest of them, is an FDA-approved Sharps container. In the United States, the FDA has deemed Sharps containers as medical devices. And so we need to go through for all of these, whether BD or with these or whatever, is what they call a pre-market certification. It has to meet certain criteria that they put on it. And in order to be legal to be sold in the United States, you have to have this 510K approval. Now with the pen needles, we have another way of looking at that, and that is here we have this pen needle here. Our pen needles come out the bottom, and then what we do is we have it red because, again, a lot of diabetics are visually impaired, so they have a bright spot to aim for. They stick it in here, and then what they do is they twist it out and then turn it. There's an ejector mechanism, and again, it's the same thing. It has a sliding tray here, so that this will hold 100 pen needles plus probably all the Lancets are going to use, because again, Lancets are pretty small, and so they can use the rest of their stuff in there too. So anyways, that's people have mentioned the federal guidelines several years ago, and they're just strictly guidelines. The EPA came out with guidelines that all the states are supposed to follow. Unfortunately, none of them have really implemented on the state level anything that really works. Every state does have regulations, laws. There's all the various states and what they've done. I can put this up here too, and you can look at it. Generally speaking, they're ineffective, and that's causing this 4% number. All around the country, they have regulations, they have rules, they have education programs, and again, they just don't seem to fly very high. Then there's local programs. I'm extremely excited about the San Luis Obispo program that I've heard about, and also it looks like they've made some pretty good progress in Santa Cruz County. There are a few other programs around. The one I like to talk about, it's, I believe, the first program in the United States that really addressed the three critical elements, and that's I'm skipping over 1305 because people already talked about that. In Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls is a relatively small town in South Dakota. Well, it's actually the biggest city in South Dakota. They call it the city there. It's 150,000 people. It was over 10 years ago, about 12 years ago, they had a serious incident in Sioux Falls where it was actually one of their local city employees that got stuck. They got very ill, and it created, again, in a town of 150,000 people, they're looking for news, and it was a big issue in Sioux Falls for a while. It's all these needles that were around town, and in particular, this poor gentleman that got hurt so bad, and his family implications and everything else. And so what they did is they instituted something, Minnehaha County, which is the county that Sioux Falls is in, a program. They went to Lewis Drug, which is the local chain in the area. There's a number of Lewis Drugs in town in addition to the big national chains like Walgreens and so on. And Lewis Drug brought into it, and they said, yeah, so the city, Minnehaha County buys the sharps containers, and they supply them to Lewis Drug. And Lewis Drug then hands these out to their customers that anybody, they can just, they don't have you don't sign up for them, they're just there on the counter, you can just walk out with them. And then they come back with their filled ones, and then they have a way of disposing of them with collection. Well, the neat thing about Sioux Falls is that they have some just fabulous metrics that you can actually measure the program. After they started this program, the landfill that they have in Sioux Falls, I was told by the Sioux Falls people that they have, and probably the rest of you are familiar with this too, they have to do what they call a landfill audit by an outside auditor that comes in and checks the toxicity and all the various things that they check for in landfills. And one of the things they check for is the quantity of sharps waste that they have laying around in there, that they check that. And the independent company that they have that came in that they were told, does these audits all around the United States, same company, and that Sioux Falls immediately after, or soon after starting this program, became the lowest percentage of sharps waste in the landfill of any landfill in the United States. And so that's one metric. The other metric they have is they have a good idea on how many sharps containers are going out, and more importantly, how many are coming back that are filled up, and they also have a metric where they know how many sharps are sold. And with all of these put together, they believe they have over 90% compliance. Now, something that's really kind of important when it comes to the pharmacies here is that, because again, they can sometimes be a little reluctant to take these things on, as has been mentioned. And you're also dealing in that market with a couple of major chains, Walgreens and Walmart, another large regional a grocery chain that has called Hy-Vee that has pharmacies in it. And at first they were reluctant to get into the program. Well, one of the unique things about diabetics is diabetics, and this is a well-known statistic in the pharmacy business, everybody knows this, is the diabetic is their most important customer. It's not only buying their syringes and needles, but it's all the other ancillary things, and as they grow older, they have a plethora of other problems. Plus, they maybe buy other things when they're in the store, they're just walking the aisles. So a diabetic customer is their most important customer. That's why you see in pharmacies anything to do with diabetes, they're on the end caps, they're on the very most important things. They have diabetes weeks and so on and so forth. And what was happening is when Lewis took over this program, Walgreens and Hy-Vee and Walmart started losing some of their diabetic customers. And so it was a market-driven program in a way, in the sense that once you had one person in the market that went to this program, the others felt for competitive reasons that they had to do it too. And when we get to Canada here in just a second, you'll see where that thing is emphasized a second time. So anyways, the U.S. summary is, with the exception of some local programs, the U.S. is lagging behind many other developed countries in the proper disposal of used sharps. And why are we behind? Again, dealing with legislative things. I know Heidi's been dealing with this. We've been traveling around the country and seeing different programs, why they don't seem to get off the ground. And you have various people that are really fighting for one reason or another, or against either the concept of expanded producer responsibility or they just like the status quo. I mean, you know, for instance, for a company, a big company like Walgreens, to get into nationwide, for instance, this concept of bringing back, I don't think it's that serious, and we'll get into what, you know, why. A lot of their concerns are not founded in reality, but nevertheless, it's always uncomfortable. We're all humans, to change, to do something different, uncertainty, and so the pharmacies sometimes push back on it. All the sharps manufacturers, with the exception of us, are pushing back on it. Occasionally the pharmaceuticals get involved in the battle too, because again, you're dealing with the expenses programs, particularly the expense of mail back and who's going to pay for this. And so there's been various concepts where the pharmaceuticals come in and they should be responsible, pay for it. It doesn't fly. I've got to get going here quickly, so what I will do here is just quickly talk about Canada for 30 seconds, because this is a very important thing too. Canada started off in the 1990s like Sioux Falls, South Dakota did. There was some pharmacies that were aiming to get to the diabetic customer as a marketing concept, so they started advertising that they would pay for the whole program. They would give out the free sharps container, they would do the disposal back, and pretty soon all the other pharmacies were losing their customers. So in the 1990s, it became common in Canada, and where the pharmacies all do, and it's just a part of doing business up there. They don't give a second thought because they've been doing it for 20 years now. They take this stuff back at their own expense. There's a couple of real important things here. Stericycle is dominant in Canada. They're just about the only one up there, in fact. How they do it is they have something they call Steripacs, which are boxes. I don't think Stericycle in the United States has this concept going, but they have Steripacs where they bring in the sharps containers in a box. They take out the sharps containers, the pharmacist does, give them to the customers, and then they have another Steripac there where they put in the empty ones. And then they also combine that with unused medications. It's one program does all, Stericycle does everything up there, and they have buckets for that. And I'm just running out of time, my apologies, but there's just too many things to talk about in this whole subject. Extended producer responsibility, Stewardship Ontario, Shoppers Drug Mart. Oh, by the way, Shoppers Drug Mart, just one more thing. You'll see that one container up there, that yellow one, that's the private label we're doing for Shoppers Drug Mart. They're huge up in Canada. If you take Walgreens, Rite Aid, and CVS and put their market share into one thing, that's Shoppers Drug Mart, and they are huge. And if you take the very latest Walgreens or CVS store here, you know, that have been just built in the last year with the nicest store you've ever seen for pharmacy, they've got hundreds of them up in Canada. And the reason why we got a yellow one for them, for their private label, their Life brand, is that in Canada, yellow has to be a sharp, you know, they don't accept the other colors. It has to be yellow. My apologies for talking.